Hello, I am Jody Wolf, and you're watching Expoz on February 29, 2020, 9:45 p.m. Birmingham. Topic: Sanders, and his problem is he has a, how do you put it, sympathizer for socialism. And for those countries who are socialist, the distinction between socialist and communist is nothing but a fine line. And that's about it. They're both communist in every way. Communism, anybody speak against the government, they get locked up or killed. Just go to the gulags in Russia and take a look. Over North Korea, they just kill you. And in Cuba, they lock you up, they penalize you. They take your space away, your apartment. They just keep putting you down until you have down to as small as a 225 square foot apartment. That's your whole apartment. And of course, everybody works for the state. And Venezuela, now you see what happened there. You had millions of people that, a lot of them are crowded in the towns and small villages, but at least they had homes. And it's kind of like if you go and look at Colombia, especially where they brewed up all the drugs and sent around the world. And they're tight places and they're well protected, but yet today they leave those places. There's nothing there. They can't get food. The water is turned off to their homes. They're in the streets. They're living under bridges, and they're fighting everywhere you go. It's just a fallen state, Venezuela, and the rightful government is trying to. Well, our president is trying to help get the rightful elected government in place. But yet there was a coup against him that continues. And when their guy went out, I can't think of his name right off, I will in a moment, he had cancer. And so from Venezuela, he goes to Cuba to the doctors. Let me tell you where the best doctors from Cuba goes when they know that the best they can do might be a 750 square foot apartment. They might make $200 or $300 a month. Might have a car. They might have 2 chickens a year. And I'm being very realistic here. And but the best of the doctors, they are the ones that leave and go someplace else for their continued training and schooling on up-to-date techniques. And I'm speaking of one particular doctor that escaped Cuba on his 3rd trip out of the country. The first 2 trips out of the country, take that back, 4th. The first 2, he went to Russia for his continued education. And the next 2, he went to Miami, Florida. That did it for him. He saw that in Russia, it's just Cuba, just a bigger, fancier Cuba. United States blew his mind. He didn't really realize the freedom he had here. So what he did, he went back, and on his 2nd trip, he continued education. His 3rd trip, he brought his wife. He snuck her out. And they ended up living in the town that I was a police officer in, Mountain Brook, Alabama. And then after I left the force, some years later, I met him. Now, I met him on the police department because I gave him a ride to Montclair Baptist Hospital up on Montclair Road, which is at the time was one of the biggest hospitals in the state. And the nicest, they had the big doctors there, the heart doctors, all they had was, that's where people came to in this state. And but this guy was a heart doctor. He's a Cuban heart doctor. And he finally, after 3 years in the States, he finally ended up living in Mount Brook, Alabama, and he's a doctor at BMC Montclair. And so this is where, again, I ran into him for a second time. I had left the department and I bought a service station in Mount Brook, and I was there 15 more years. And he traded with me. And during this time, I met his wife. Both at the time were in their late 50s. And she said, "Can I tell you a story about Cuba?" I said, "You sure can." She said, "You know the difference between communist or socialist and capitalism?" I said, "I do." She said, "Let me give you some of the finer details." She went on to talk about how Castro, when his coup took over Cuba, they ousted the rightfully elected government by killing a lot of people. But the rightfully elected government, he fled, and I don't know what country he went to. He went for protection, and they did protect him. But no one went back to Cuba to help him get put back in. It was just a coup. Just like the very same thing that tried to happen to our president right here in the USA. They tried the same thing on Trump, except there's too many people here and too many damn hard-headed capitalists that's not about to go socialist. And I'm one of them. So she tells me that when Castro comes in, the first year he taught all the children over PA systems that's wired to every school. All schools are now state schools, or you know what I mean. There's no private schooling, no homeschooling. It's all done by Castro and his cronies that he put in place. And it's propaganda, nonstop, all the time, day and night. Anything you watch on TV, all 2 channels, propaganda. Radio, you got radio. You do have some music, but you still have propaganda between the music. In the grammar schools, or before the grammar school, in the kindergarten, they start telling the little 4-year-olds, pray that Santa Claus will bring you a lot of presents for Christmas. They'd pray and pray and pray. They'd get no presents. Another year goes by, and he'd go to them again. Pray hard that Santa will bring you presents. And they'd pray and pray. They wouldn't get any presents. 3rd year, pray that Jesus will bring you presents. And they got all excited. They pray and pray that Jesus would bring them presents. Well, guess what? They didn't come. Now they hate Santa, and they don't like Jesus. So when they pray to Castro, they get presents. So by the time they are in their 2nd grade, the 4th year, the 2nd grade, they owe Castro everything. He is Santa. He's the Easter Bunny. He's Jesus, all in one. But don't you dare pray, to ask Santa to bring you gifts, or Easter Bunny, or, don't do that. Especially Jesus. Don't do that. They wipe your mind there. And this is how they get the children. And it's so easy to find this information out. Just listen to what they say down in Little Cuba, or Little Havana down in Miami. It's easy to find out these things. It's all true. It's a communist country. Who are their friends? Russia. They give them just about all that they have. And used to, Venezuela gave them. Now Cuba is shipping their part of their guard, I guess, their army into Venezuela. And so is Russia. Then you have China. Even China's in Cuba. So you get communists, socialists, all grouping together as one. North Korea has been in Cuba delivering supplies, mainly weapons. There's weapons in Cuba that people don't know about. But just want to tell you that on Hannity today at 7 p.m., I was listening to his second hour, and he had Bernie Sanders taped, and he was letting Bernie ramble on. Bernie was talking about how, well, look what Russia's doing. He's trying to help Trump get in. But I can't go against Russia. This is kind of what Bernie is saying. And he talks about Cuba, poor little Cuba. Look how our president's treating them people. And, well, it's not our president. Look at the guy who's their president, Fidel Castro's brother. Now, and he talks a little bit about Venezuela, failed state, but it doesn't mention failed state. He just mentioned things got out of hand. But when he talks about little rocket man in North Korea, he talks bad about him. Why? Because Trump extended his hand to North Korea and said, look, you got beautiful beaches down here. You can do so much without being a menace to society and to the world. That pissed off Bernie Sanders. So just keep in mind that when you think that you want to go and be a socialist, be under Bernie, he will be your leader. He will be the only one who will have say-so over what you do. Your capitalist jobs go away. All those factories that left during Obama's day that are coming back, they'll stop and they'll start going back to where they came from. They were here, 60,000 of them left. Now we got 15,000 back and 20,000 more on the way quickly. Sanders will turn right back around and put it right back where Obama had it. Except there's one big thing that nobody seems to be talking about. That big thing is called Agenda 21. You don't bet a nickel that they're not sitting there waiting to come into this country and the UN set up forces and patrol our countries, our neighborhoods, your street. That's what they're all waiting for. And who is behind the UN? Well, the good old Antichrist and false prophet himself. That's the goal. That is the goal right there. Destroy as many people as you can. The more people, like in Venezuela, that God can't help according to them. More people like Cuba, God didn't help us, but Castro did. You go to North Korea, and if you mention either one of the two, you get killed. Go to Russia and China, you're penalized heavily. Just think about that. There's a difference in the way the United States operates and the way China operates. China, the state makes all of the money. In the United States, the hard-working people makes the money. This is why Bernie wanted to tax all millionaires, starting at $700,000 and taking 90% of it above that. But until somebody said, but Bernie, aren't you a millionaire? And then he changed it to the next year or the next term, which is this year. He changed it from millionaires to billionaires. So he is not included in that taxation because he's not a billionaire. Isn't that a hoot? I trust Bernie Sanders about as far as I can throw him, or about as when he can outrun an ostrich. I'll give my hands up, but I won't pat him on the back. He's going to drop dead any minute, you know that. But I'm going to tell you, he'll destroy this nation. And there are about 3 others in there that'll do the same thing. You got a Muslim woman that will turn us so quick, there'll be more no-go zones in our country than there is in Iran and Afghanistan and Pakistan. No-go zones are places that you don't go because they're under Sharia law. That'll be all over this country. There'll be pockets like that everywhere. MS-13 set up, and they'll have their own sanctuary cities anywhere they choose with a socialist government. Think about what you can have if you go that route, or what you can keep by staying where we are. Look, God put Trump in, and God will keep him in for 4 more years. After that, guys, we're going to be out of here. And in my opinion, before that term ends, we'll be out of here. Listen to what's going on everywhere right now. It's not good. And it's simply reading Daniel chapter 8 has begun. Fixing to open the doors right here on Revelations chapter 6, verse 1. That's when the trumpet starts. Guys, stick with your prayers going up. Pray every night. 2 Chronicles 7:14. After you pray John 3:16 and get saved. You might not be here tomorrow night. Jody Wolf, Expoz. By the way, stand by the Jews. They're the ones that we watch so that we know what time it is. And time is late. I mean seconds, mere seconds to midnight. Just watch the Jews. Jody Wolf, Expoz.